What's happening out there, gang? Welcome to the rotoscouts MLB Lineup Card show for Wednesday. Good to see some of you guys in the chat. I was just chuckling a little bit. Our pal Dennis, ex-Cubs fan, dropped in the Discord, dropped a little Judge Smails. Well, we're waiting right as we hit 4:15, I think, which I appreciate, obviously. Just dropping the old placeholder lineups in here real quick. All right, that's all of them, so not going to miss my spot again tonight like I did on Monday. All right, we're all set. Hopefully you guys are having a good Wednesday afternoon. Oh, nice big meaty slate. 12 gamer to follow up the ridiculous 14 gamer from last night. So plenty to talk about on this one. Let me make sure I'm out here. Everybody can hear me. Big Bino says, yo, my guy, I am locked. I'm locked too. We've got Stephen B. We've got Pod Degen Stoner says, wake and bake DFS baseball from Garden City, Colorado. Love to see that. Get a bunch of guys coming back every day. So welcome everybody who's here. Big congrats to, let me pull the name up real quick. Big congrats to 3 Windy 1 City 2. That's a Discord name. I'm not sure what this person's actual name is, but took down a top 10 finish with the old Roto Scouts logo on I think it was DraftKings last night. So that was nice to see. Got referred to us over here by our pal Velo in the Discord chat there. So congrats. Nice to see that. Gave credit to some Rotoscouts articles and Rotoscouts content. I know he's a stochastic user as well, so I'm sure that was somewhere in the mix there too. But it was nice to see, and got a little logo shout out on that one. So I appreciate that. If you guys find yourself in that position, throw it up there. I'll make sure to shout you out on the shows at the very least. But we'll figure out something at some point where toss you a little bit of money or something like that if you finish in a good spot. Nice little bonus. But can't get too crazy with it yet, obviously, because money not in from the site, maybe not so good sending it out on the site, but we'll see what happens. Big Bino says, love what you're doing. Checked out your website. Man, I couldn't believe it. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. We do try. We've got the new feature up there. Went up again today with the top stacks, breaking it down for points, breaking it down for value, home run potential, the opposing starting pitcher. So some situational look, kind of trying to provide a snapshot of the slate, everything that we talk through on these shows. But 12 games on deck. Want to try and get out of here 5:30-ish, somewhere around there we'll shoot for. Get a little time to build lineups. We got out, I think, at like 6 o'clock yesterday. It was a little tight, but we got it done. So let's dive in. Got a good one all teed up here. Looks like I got everything squared away in there, what I'm showing off. So first game on deck, another interesting one between the Blue Jays and the Orioles. Both of these lineups are the confirmed version of the lineups. I think we get usable parts at pitcher. It's an interesting pitching slate because we've got a few premium guys in good enough matchups or very, very good matchups that are just pushing major scores. So a lot of these pitchers like Jose Barrios that we'll talk about, maybe a little bit of Kyle Bradish and some of these other guys that are like mid-range type options just play better on DK where you need that second starter. A lot of these guys are less than likely to replace a top-end performance from a Framber Valdez, from a Clayton Kershaw today. So there's or from a Glasnow today. He was the third one up at the top of the board. So there's a little bit of hesitation on a guy like Jose Barrios when he comes in 9,500 on the FanDuel slate. That's a good projection, that 34.16 against the frisky Orioles lineup. We saw this lineup hang a bunch of runs up yesterday, even without Ryan Mountcastle, and Gunnar Henderson was really coming to his own. But I just find Barrios a little bit more usable at that DK price. At 8,600, you can click him in alongside one of those premium starters. It's a premium to pay to do it, but I think there's a lot more upside for that type of a pitcher on the DK slate. Overall, Barrios, this has been the good version of him for the most part this season. 3.61 ERA, a 4.0 xFIP, 22% strikeout rate. We all know he gave up way too much power last year. He was not frisky equals Terry for generational. Generational now. Wow. All right. I guess, yeah, if your team is good, for 1 year every generation, I guess you could call it that. Yeah, it's an up and coming O's team for sure, buddy. I'm a fan of what they're doing down there. So yeah, it's a frisky lineup right now, especially in this form with no Mountcastle, but definitely got out and got ahead of it yesterday. Aaron Hicks continues to be the best player in baseball. Yep, it's Aaron Hicks. I wrote about it today. I said, hey, it was a decent acquisition, turned into a good acquisition for them so far. We'll see what happens in another 2 weeks. So if we're going to Barrios, it's more on the DK slate. He's not unusable by any means. 9,500 on the FanDuel slate. I think you can get away with it. You get maybe a handful of strikeouts. He's not a premium option for strikeouts. The Orioles aren't filthy with strikeouts either. Gunnar swings and misses a little too much or strikes out looking a little too much, but walks at a 14% clip, gets on base at 355 and has just been killing it lately. Adley doesn't strike out much at all, 13.9%. But then you get a decent run through Santander, O'Hearn, Austin Hayes, Aaron Hicks, yes, who all strike out in the mid-20s. So there's enough upside for some strikeouts there for Berrios. So he's on the board. A little bit less enthusiasm on FanDuel. You can play him a little bit more aggressively, I think, on DK. Bradish on the other side, kind of interesting. 22.5% strikeouts. That's right there with what Berrios has done for the season. 53 innings, 11 in 11 starts, a 4.25 ERA, a 3.98 xFIP. If we're going to Berrios with similar numbers, it makes sense to go to Kyle Bradish a little bit here at much cheaper prices, 6,200, 6,700. I don't know that we get him to the quality start point on the FanDuel slate. I don't know that he's worth the risk on FanDuel. He would be one of my more esteemed pitchers in that, among the $6,000 and $7,000 starters on the FanDuel slate. I just don't know how much I'm dipping down to that level with the options available today. As an SP2 at 6,200 on DK, even against the Blue Jays here, I think he's on the board enough with the idea of some strikeouts. Needs to check power. He's been good at limiting home runs, 2.20% home run rate, despite 45.6% hard hits, 91 miles an hour average exit velo. There's enough upside there, I think, probably for Bradish that a couple shares as a dart throw for that $6,200 price range. Click him in with some of the premium guys, and I think you can get a decent start. It's definitely a little bit thin with the opposition. There's very low strikeouts in Springer and Bo Bichette and Vladdy Guerrero. Interesting configuration with Dalton Varsho hitting third. I hadn't spotted that yet. This is the first time through the confirm lineups for me. So that's a bit of an interesting twist with Varsho, the lefty, hitting third there, adding some power on the left side of the plate to the top of the lineup. Adds a heavier strikeout bat, but he's not bad for strikeouts either. 20.4% on this season, 24.5% last year. The honest number is probably somewhere in between. When he's hitting for a little bit more power, he's probably striking out a little bit more. That follows. You get Vladdy at 16.1% strikeouts, Alejandro Kirk at 11.5% strikeouts in his 192 plate appearances. So it's a tough top end here in terms of the strikeouts. It's really only Varsho that strikes out at even more than 20% before you hit Chapman at 26. Then you drop back down with Kiermaier and Merrifield. So not a ton of strikeouts there. It limits the potential, limits the upside a little bit for Bradish, but I think all of that is cooked into 6,200 here. So a couple darts at value for him. If you're going to Blue Jays, it's that, that top four is obvious. I think everybody knows that. You can definitely use Alejandro Kirk for 2,600 as a catcher. Hitting fifth in this lineup, that's a productive spot in the batting order. 192 plate appearances, 3 home runs, a 99 WRC plus. He hasn't been all that great this year. 33.1% hard hits is your culprit. 45% last year. He was a better power hitter last year. But I think there's life in that bat. So you can go to Kirk. You can certainly go to Chapman with all his hard hits. I know he scuffled a little bit over the last month and change, but hit his 9th home run the other day. So we've got upside with Matt Chapman. Kiermaier, Merrifield are mix and match pieces. Merrifield's the better player, the better hitter among those two. 17 stolen bases on the year. A good hit tool. Maybe use him as a wraparound play back toward the top of the lineup from second base or the outfield for 3,600, 3,000. So you like Merrifield in the 8th spot there. He's actually probably going to be a little bit better in that spot for our purposes than he was as like a 6 hitter. If they keep him in that 8-9 spot, I actually like him a little bit better because then he correlates a little bit stronger with the top of the lineup. So we do that. Joker, go lie down, pal. I thought he was going to chill for us. I have actually secret weapon. We'll see how that works. Hey, buddy. Want a cookie? Yeah, very nice. Go get it. Cookies are over there. All right, we'll see how he does with those. It's probably just going to make him want more cookies. That is how that fat son of a bitch works. Right, buddy? You're so good. Anyway. So that's the Blue Jays up and down. The Orioles, it's Gunnar, it's Adley off the top. Anthony Santander bolts in with those guys. I like Austin Hayes as my 4th hitter in that group. And then you can take your shots with O'Hearn, who had a productive day yesterday, is having a nice little season over 76 plate appearances. Nothing to argue with in 319, 368, 623, and a 304 ISO. We'll see how that looks in another few weeks as well. Frazier, Lester, Urias in the bottom end. Maybe use Ramon Urias as a wraparound backup to the quality up top. So we'll see how that goes. But a little bit less interest in the Orioles in this spot than in the Blue Jays, I think, given the pitcher matchup. Hold on one second. Buddy, go lie down. Come on, go lie down. You don't get cookies for being bad. I tell you. Makes for a good broadcast. All right, let's jump to the game number 2 here. We'll keep on rolling. We've got Austin Gomber. We've got a Coors Field-esque total, not in Coors Field with the Rockies involved here. Gomber is pushing a ton of runs toward the Red Sox. I would imagine, Greg, assuming you're talking about this Rockies-Red Sox game, I imagine this is going to be a super source of chalk on both sites. The Red Sox were pulling a run total that was more than a run higher than everybody else on the slate earlier in the day. There were 3 other teams, I think, in the 5s. Everybody else below 5. The Red Sox were sitting at like 6.4. They're just an outrageous opportunity against Austin Gomber in this spot. So I don't think that has changed. We'll take a look at the confirmed lineup here. No Rafi Devers. So that's probably come down somewhat with no Devers in the lineup. That's definitely a ding. It's obviously taking their best player out of the lineup there. So that'll come down somewhat, but I still think it's a good spot. And maybe that brings it down enough that it actually becomes kind of sneaky. Like the run total will probably get cut down to, I don't know, high 5s. But it's still going to be a good spot for run creation here. It's not like Devers is going to represent a full run in Vegas, I wouldn't think. So you get Ref Snyder up at the top. Good contact profile against left-handed pitching. No power to speak of. And if you think of a spot where Gomber's going to be gone after the 3rd, and they probably bring a righty out of the pen, then Ref Snyder kind of falls off. So he's a tricky option in that leadoff spot. I wouldn't get carried away with shares of Ref Snyder because he's really only effective against lefties. And he's a journeyman utility man type. So he's not an everyday player. He's a guy who specializes in a role against lefties. It's the right spot in the batting order for him to lead off, and he could give you a handful of points as a correlated scoring piece early, and then it won't matter. But I don't love Ref Snyder. The price is fine. It's a good option. You should include it, but do it with like eyes open as to what the nature of the play is, I guess is what I'm saying. Justin Turner, cheap pricing, multi-position on FanDuel. You like Justin Turner there. Verdugo hitting 3rd is fine. Good on base skills, good hit tool. A little bit of power. He'll probably deliver a little bit more or try to deliver a bit more in the power in the 3 spot there. Adam Duvall, light tower power from the right side of the plate. 4 early home runs that went on the IL, 54 total plate appearances here. So it's, you take what you get from Duvall, but a major source of power over the years, and a guy that 5,100, 2,900, I think the price is right in that spot in the lineup. Weak back end, though. Christian Arroyo, Enrique Hernandez. Tristan Casas has major power potential, but hasn't really delivered a lot of it. A 168 ISO, 7 home runs is fine in 222 plate appearances. I think we're expecting more, but you'll take 7. What you like is the 13.3% barrels, the 44.5% hard hits. He's okay at limiting strikeouts, and he's been good at walking. So a lot of it still needs to come through for Casas, but I think it will. Like, there's enough here to hang an expectation on in the long term. It's just a matter of whether he's going to deliver night by night. Lefty hasn't been friendly to him overall, I don't think, this season, so not a great Casas spot. I do like Connor Wong as a catcher. I think you mix him into your Red Sox stacks for sure. If you need a super cheap one-off catcher at 2,900 on DK, he's probably not going to be all that popular, despite being in what will be a popular lineup. And I like his contact profile. 6 home runs and 153 plate appearances, 11.7% on the barrels. Nice ability to make good contact with the ball there. Pablo Reyes rounds out the lineup as a kind of a mix and match player. The Rockies side of things, going up against Whitlock, I think there's good expectation for an upside for Whitlock here. He is... What's up, Fanatic? What's going on, buddy? Good to see you in there. Yeah, don't mind fading Boston with that lineup if they're owned. Still a solid spot. Yeah, it's not a full fade. When I talk about getting away from teams, it's typically I'll be a little bit under if the field's at 10% Red Sox or as a team, I'll be at 6. If the field's at 25% Adam Duvall and Alex Verdugo, I'll be at 15, something like that. So it's more an undercut than getting away. Fnatic says he kept getting Whitlock in the lineup generator. That's not overly surprising. There's plenty of potential here. Going up against one of the worst lineups in baseball, I think it was a 92 WRC plus against righties collectively for the season. It is definitely not a spot for Rockies hitters. They're pretty low end, and I do think you get enough out of Whitlock here where you're getting, last year you had a 26.4% strikeout rate, year before 27.2. Some bullpen work in there, but 9 starts last year still supported that. Was very good for limiting walks. A good pitcher overall. Came back from injury to start the season. 6 starts, 32 innings. The strikeouts are down. The walks are about the same. The ERA, the xFIP are not quite where they were. But I think against this team, and he's given up some power, but I think against this Rockies lineup, this is a great get-right spot. If I'm remembering correctly, he went 6 in his last start, so we've got the idea of a quality start on tap here. So for 6,700, 7,000, he's definitely in the value pool on DK. I think you can use him on FanDuel, but it's one of those spots again where it's like you're throwing a value dart that has to still score enough to replace if one of those premium guys goes out and gives you a 60-something point performance on FanDuel. Whitlock, even at price, is still, you're going to need to either drill a 40-some-odd point hitter, or you're going to need him to give you a good enough performance to get within like 20 points of that. So you do need performance out of your value pitchers today. So it's, we'll see what we get from him. But yeah, I like him there. If you're going to Rockies, it's very limited. It's the lefties. It's Nolan Jones. It's Ryan McMahon. Maybe some Randall Grichuk from the right side and Elias Diaz from the right side. And then maybe some Harold Castro. I like Eleuders Montero. I like Brenton Doyle as, potential kids who can grow, who can maybe hit for power in the future. But just this spot in Fenway against this pitcher, I don't love that spot for those guys. And it's just such a weak lineup up and down that I don't know that I would have enough shares to really justify going to guys at the bottom of it when there's a few hitters that I think are a little bit better here for this park in this situation at the top. So very limited shares of Rockies interest. No interest in Austin Gomber. Definite value interest in Garrett Whitlock. And definite interest in the Red Sox, but definitely taking a big ding from the lack of Rafi Devers. So that would knock them down if we're looking at our stacks board. That would take the Red Sox down a little bit. They were already down a little bit from where you would expect them with the lofty run total, because some of these guys just, no matter what you do, don't project out that well. So when you're taking an average of the numbers in their lineup, it doesn't really translate through a lot of the time as strongly as maybe as it should, given the run totals. But I think we're tempering expectations there. Stephen Whitlock says Whitlock's been throwing a nice changeup lately. I hadn't looked into his pitch mix, but I will definitely take your word on that. He's been a good pitcher over time, so that it doesn't surprise me if he's done a little tinkering and coming back with a different mix that works better for him now. Definitely strong get right spot against the Rockies for him. So I like that. I like that spot for him, and it makes sense that he was coming up just given where he's priced. It makes sense that he's coming up a lot in the lineup generator. I'm sure he's highly projected across town. Interesting spot here with the Mets and the Yanks squaring off. Somebody asked, don't think it gets canceled. I actually forgot to check weather. I wasn't seeing anything standing out, but let me pull it real quick, and we'll take a quick look. I wasn't thinking weather-wise before starting the show. I do try and look from time to time. Our pal over at Roto Grinders, ripoff, says... Colorado, Boston, there's rain around. More likely a delay or late start, though it's a bit early to try and figure out which of those it may be. Winds out to left at 10 miles an hour, which plays decently well for power. He's got it as yellow. There was rain coming that blasted through the New York area several hours ago that might be headed up Boston's way, and I'm sure it's part of the same mix. That's also potentially impacting this game in Queens, but it cleaned up here in New York somewhat, or in North Jersey anyway, somewhat for now. We'll see how that comes through. He's liking it to clear with winds out to right field at 10 miles an hour in Queens, and says, making its way toward Boston. So I assume I'm correct about that being basically the same front. Low expectations for postponement, it looks like, though. I think maybe we hit some delays. Maybe that impacts the pitching in Boston a little bit more. So like a guy like Whitlock coming back from an injury, goes 4 innings, 25-minute rain delay. Do they throw him back out there? Maybe you need a little bit more, like 45-minute rain delay. Do they throw him back out there? Because 25 minutes could be an inning, a productive inning at the plate for his hitters, although not necessarily this year. Minor concern about the weather. Not really on the radar here from me. If you see changes in it, shout them out, and we'll revisit, and definitely check it before you launch 150 shares of Whitlock into the sun. But yeah, I think both games are playable. Pitching in this one probably safer than in Boston with less expectation of a delay. But you get 2 guys who have been kind of rocky, kind of up and down, and not pitching like themselves. 2 historically good generational starters, to use a generational word there. They are premium guys when they're going right. I think the dip is probably a little bit more real for Verlander, just given the age, given the injury, and monster comeback last year from the Tommy John, but maybe it's caught up to him now a year later. So we'll see. It's still very early. There are some signs of life, but it hasn't been pretty for Verlander overall. 4.85 ERA, 4.57 xFIP, a 19.9% strikeout rate, only a 9.3% swinging, and 23.5% CSW. That's your problem. That's your concern there. So if he's not finding those swinging strikes, throwing strikes, he's not going to obviously find strikeouts, and he's probably going to be making mistakes in trying to pitch around the edges a little bit, which is probably what's dinged him a little bit here. 4.22 home run rate, 42.5% hard hits, 90.7 miles an hour average exit velo. Just not Verlander-esque numbers. Like we saw with Scherzer last night, these are all baked into what he's doing price-wise. 8,800. Obviously, that's not priced like Cy Young Justin Verlander anymore. So I think he's playable against the Yankees. It's the version of the Yankees lineup without Aaron Judge, just like it's the version of the Mets lineup with no Pete Alonso. So in probably fairly small doses on either site, I do think he can get away with some Verlander. Kind of like I said about Scherzer, which didn't come through yesterday. Both Scherzer and Severino gave up early runs. It wasn't pretty. And that could definitely be the situation with Cole and Verlander here. We could see both of these guys give up a handful of runs fairly early and not really claw their way back. I think Cole has a lower probability chance of doing that and a higher probability chance of finding some strikeouts along the way. He hasn't been as bad as Verlander. He's been tinkering with his pitch mix, sitting at a 2.84 ERA, but a 3.97 xFIP. That's probably the more honest of the two numbers right now. 25.8% strikeouts, 8.3% walks is up, 10.8% swinging strikes, and 28.2% CSW are down hard for Cole. So he's lost a lot in terms of the strikeout rate. His strikeout rate has dipped 10 points since 2 years ago. That's concerning. It's still a small sample, but he is not finding the whiffs this year. Several of his pitches, significant drop in whiff rate the last time I checked, which was 2 starts ago. So I don't fully trust Cole here, but there's enough in the model. There's enough in the history. I wish he was priced down a little bit going up against the Mets, who are an active enough lineup here, especially that top end is pretty good, even with no Pete Alonso. So it's not a great spot. It's not one of my favorite spots for Cole. He's in the mix, but he's priced like some of those top end options, and I don't know that he lands at the same level as them. We'll get to those guys. We'll talk about them. Talent wise, over time wise, he does. But what he is this year in this form at this price has me a little bit more hesitant than with those other options. I imagine the field is seeing it the same way. So if the field is reluctant to get to Cole, I might push the edges a little bit. Like I'll probably push some additional shares on either site if I saw Garrett Cole come in with a single-digit ownership projection. That would probably lead me to upwards of 10, 15%. We'll see what it comes out as. But yeah, definite concerns around Cole, both as a DFS gamer who wants to roster him at an expensive price and as a Yankee fan. Not great. The lineups on either side, I think you're taking your chances that you're not getting these pitchers in a return to form type of a game. You're taking probably bigger chances in rostering Mets because, like I said, Cole's been a little bit better over the course of time this season, has also made more starts. Nimmo, Marte, McNeil up top. 3 kind of slap-hitting guys in their current form. Marte and McNeil haven't really delivered a ton at the plate. 257, 278 in terms of the batting averages this year. McNeil needs that batting average to survive. He's a 355 on base, a 106 WRC+, but if he's not hitting 300, he's not worth all that much in this lineup, especially not hitting third. Brendan Nimmo, great leadoff hitter, 378 on base, 29% better than average creating runs, has a little bit of pop, decent speed, and plenty of hard hits. Really like Nimmo up top. Francisco Lindor hitting cleanup, is still delivering power, 12 home runs on the season, a 202 ISO. He's struggling in the triple slash, he's struggling with run creation and getting on base. Only a 293 on base percentage, 213 average. That's ugly for Lindor, but he's priced down, 4,700, 3,200. He's cheap for what we know that kid can do. Francisco Alvarez is just been a dominant catcher so far this year. 12 home runs in a unexpected outburst of power early in the season, and kind of through May. 292 ISO on the year, an 11.2% barrel rate for the season. Only cost 3,800, 2,900. Get him where you need catchers at least. Brett Beatty, Tommy Pham, Eduardo Escobar, Mark Vientos. Two guys on one side of their career, two guys on the other side of their career. Pham and Escobar probably rounding third and headed for home in their careers. Both can still produce a little bit. 6 home runs for Pham, 4 for Escobar. Can drive the ball a little bit. You can see with Pham, 17% barrels, 51.1% hard hits in his limited 137 plate appearances. It's not bad at 2,900, 2,700. Escobar's been worse this year. Hasn't really turned on the ball very well this year. 240, 287, 410. Kind of lost his job early in the season, never clawed it back. But he's in the lineup. He's an okay piece. Beatty is a good piece at 50% hard hits, 235, 320, 356. We need to see all that climb a little bit. But 4 home runs as a rookie and 169 plate appearances remains cheap at third base. I like Beatty for where he's hitting in the lineup. And then Mark Vientos is very cheap, 2,500, 2,200 across sites. First base on DK, third base on FanDuel. Significant home run upside for this kid. Not necessarily coming through in the model against Cole here, but 6.35 against Cole is nothing to sneeze at from a 9 hitter. He's got 1 in 45 plate appearances, but he was raking in AAA, and he's a big time prospect for them. So you like to go to Vientos as maybe a sneaky play down toward the bottom. He's not a great option for like wrapping around to play along with the Nimmo, Marte, McNeil. That would be a weird construction anyway. You're taking a free swinging power hitter type who doesn't get on base at an aggressive clip and putting him ahead of 3 slap hitter types who kind of do get on base okay. So just a strange construction if you tried to do that. But I don't love the way that this lineup is built right now with that top 3. All of those guys can get on base ahead of Lindor and Alvarez, but they're kind of an odd mix with one another. Like one of those guys should probably hit 5th with some power up top. I might go like Nimmo. I think the Nimmo Alvarez configuration actually makes more sense. Just go Nimmo, put Alvarez second, or let Lindor hit second if you don't want to hit the kid second, and then let the kid hit cleanup, and swap like Marte down or McNeil down. I'd probably hit Marte third and drop McNeil down in the batting order, even to like 7th. Hell, you could even use Tommy Pham higher up if you wanted to. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the condition of the Mets lineup or what the decisions they're making are, just how to play it. So I think they're moderately in play, but Cole is. I still have lingering belief in Cole, but you do have the upside to take your shots, at least with Cole in this form with some Mets bats. The other side of it with the Yanks, Jake Bauers in the leadoff spot is a weird leadoff hitter at 2,600. Power hitting leadoff hitter who doesn't really get on base all that much, strikes out at a 33.3% clip. I guess he's walking 12.1% of the time in his 99 plate appearances, so that's good. But yeah, weird casting there as a leadoff man, but we'll see what happens. Ahead of Giancarlo Stanton, Josh Donaldson, Anthony Rizzo, obviously a trio of 3 power hitters there. Donaldson's basically selling out for home runs at this point. He's got 5 in 47 plate appearances, striking out at a 31.9% clip. And if you see him out there at the plate, he's just trying to hit the ball to the sun every time he goes up there. When he connects, it's been good. 28.6% barrels, 57.1% hard hits in the tiny sample. Well, I don't know. I don't have a ton of faith that he's going to finish the year with like 25 at this point. So maybe finishes in the teens, and I think I would take that. Rizzo, dynamite player, dropped down to 4,200, 3,000 at first base. He struggled a little bit with the hit tool and with power too over the back half of May into June. 11 home runs, a 172 ISO, still at a 121 WRC plus though. Very productive hitter. DJ, struggling this year overall. 26.3% strikeouts is double what he normally does. 236, 297, 394. At the start of the year, he was hitting a little bit better. Then he started hitting for a little bit more power. He's still got a 47.1% hard hit rate, but nothing's really working right for DJ. He does have first and third base eligibility for 3,400 on DK. First, second, and third on FanDuel at 2,700 has a little bit more value. Then you get into the ugly part. IKF. For all Michael K wants to talk about how IKF is so much better at the plate this year, and he's swinging aggressively, and he looks locked in at the plate. That's all bullshit. It's all nonsense. This is not a good hitter. He's got a 4.1% barrel rate, a 36.9% hard hit rate, 3 home runs, a 111 ISO, a 76 WRC plus, and 153 plate appearances. Come on, Michael K. You're better than that. Jose Trevino, Anthony Volpe. Volpe's been lousy. 9 home runs, 14 stolen bases is great for counting stats. The kid has I forget the number. It was like a 3-something OPS on base plus slugging percentage for the last month and change. Major league average is in the 700s, so worse than half the on base plus slugging from Volpe in the last month and change. 264 on base, 357 slugging overall for the season. Not a good OPS. 71 WRC plus. Swings and misses too much. 30.3% strikeout rate. Unlike the Hal, right? Hal's still alive. Hank's dead. Pretty sure. Unlike the surviving Steinbrenner son, I actually do think Anthony Volpe should be sent down and get more seasoning. He's not ready. I think it's clear. Yeah, he drove the ball early in the season. Yeah, he can steal a base. But if he can't get on, if he can't hit for any kind of... I don't care about batting average. You guys know that. If he was hitting 225 and getting on base at even a 300 clip, we'd be talking about a different player. Right now, he's a problem. But you can use him for DFS, by the way. Hitting in the 9 spot, there's value there in his counting stats. If he gets on and wraps around to Bowers, Stanton, now you're talking. You're getting value there. So DFS wise, use Anthony Volpe. MLB wise, maybe we send him back down to the farm for a little bit more cooking. All right, let's talk Angels. Let's talk Rangers. We've got some lefties in this one. I'll jump back over to the other page here so I can see some of the chat, see what everybody's talking about. Trey's been flying the logo. I appreciate you, Trey. That's awesome, pal. That's really appreciate that. Trey says he took down the $1 3 max last night. That's awesome, dude. Congratulations. Hopefully people did see the logo, but I'm just happy to see the results right now, man. It's look, I'm soft launching this thing. I'm relying on the word to spread on its own and not charging anything or anything like that. It's I like putting the content out in the world. I like seeing you guys win with it, and if I can win with it as well, we're all doing well, and we're all ahead of the game. But it's great to see. I do appreciate you putting the logo in your thing there, and anybody else who wants to do that, all love here. So I appreciate that. I appreciate all the likes and the subscribing that you guys are doing on the YouTube channel. Any newcomers in the chat? Rick says, "Hey Terry, you handsome bastard." Hey, right back at you, Rick. So anybody new to the chat, hit the like, hit the subscribe, so you know when we go live. And I appreciate the comments. Any questions you guys want to drop into the chat. All right. Couple of lefties in this one. Reed Detmers, Andrew Heaney. Overall, I think Heaney is, the guy with the longer track record, but I think both of these pitchers are usable at price. It's another situation where I think they're just better for DK use, given the high-end starters that we've got at expensive prices on FanDuel. Heaney would need to come out, be the good Heaney, strike out a bunch of these Angels hitters, and deliver a big score to compete at 9,000. I think he could, but I think it's a lot less than likely, where at 84 on DK, he can give you a serviceable enough start, a good handful of strikeouts, and be a more potent option alongside one of those starters than he is instead of one of those starters on the blue side. 7,000 Reed Detmers, I think, gives you an even stronger shot at that kind of a value. He's pitching well this season. 27.2% strikeouts, a 3.87 xFIP, 91 miles an hour average exit velo, 42.9% hard hits, but limiting barrels to 4.5%, home runs to 2%, walking a few too many at 9.2%. So you do want to have Ranger stacks. They are the highest scoring team in baseball. They're very expensive. They're difficult to roster. And I think Detmers has enough quality that you can get by as a value play. I'm not saying roster him 150 times. But in a few shares, if you're throwing a bunch of value darts, which I think makes sense on this slate, you're going to need to offset some of those high pitcher costs somewhere. So I do think there's upside in getting to Detmers. 7,200 on FanDuel, you're dealing with that same situation. He's going to have to deliver, but at least he gives you the price offset where you can buy a hitter who might give you the 20, 25, 30 points that you'll need to make up the gap. Joker, please go lie down, pal. Come on. Stop. Go lie down. It's not time for anything. Larry says the Texas lineup is out. Let me grab that right now. I'll maybe throw him another cookie to shut him up. Let's see, Rangers lineup. Drop that in. Whoops. Don't want it as Unicode. All right, Rangers version of the lineup. Ooh, Ezekiel Duran jumping up to the 3rd spot. That's interesting. I don't dislike that. Lara saying no love. I don't dislike Ezekiel Duran hitting there. And Nathaniel Lowe is a good source of value. I write about him a lot. I like his bat hitting 3rd for this team at cheap prices every day. But Duran's going to give you a similar version of that with multi-position eligibility, shortstop and outfield on DK, second short and outfield on FanDuel. Cheap price is $34.29. He's been outstanding this season. 302, 351, 512 with a 210 ISO, 138 WRC plus, 8 homers. This is a kid that they expected a decent amount from. Had performed good in spots, had performed well in the minors, delivered in spots, but never consistently enough, and they never had enough playing time for him. And he finally found a basically full-time role here this year. So I actually like Duran hitting third there. Sturdy contact profile, 11.6% barrels, 47.9% hard hits. Just right on brand with these guys. Corey Seager, Duran, Adolis Garcia, Josh Young. Marcus Semien doesn't do it with the barrels in the hard hits. 34.9% hard hits, 6.8% barrels last year, 40.4% hard hits, 6% barrels this year. Still has 9 home runs, still hits all the home runs that he does, drives the ball like crazy. So Semien is just a weird case in terms of the contact profile, but 183 ISO, 126 WRC plus, good counting stats out of him. Corey Seager's a star alongside him in the infield. 1 through 5 plus Jonah Heim plus Mitch Garver at catcher. You can mix and match those catchers on DK. You can use them both in a weird configuration, especially no Nathaniel Lowe in the lineup here. Now you get Jonah Heim at one spot, Mitch Garver at the util. You're using both catcher spots in a weird configuration alongside like a Josh Young, Adolis Garcia mid-lineup stack, or a Duran Garcia, Josh Young. It's just a lot of ways to put this lineup together. Even Robbie Grossman and Leota Taveras are cheap or effective down the bottom. Grossman 233, 312, 383 isn't great this season, but 7 home runs in 221 plate appearances is fine. 93 WRC plus for a fill-in guy who costs 2,500, 2,800. You can do worse than that. And Taveras has been downright good. 130 WRC plus in 203 plate appearances. Only cost 3,200, 3,000. 5 home runs, 6 stolen bases. 301, 361, 164. From a guy that we expected numbers from when he was coming up. He was a more highly regarded prospect than what he's delivered at the major league level so far. But, maybe kind of finally coming into his own a little bit post type here. So, yeah, I do like the Rangers lineup, but I think there's value in going to Detmers. Taking Nathaniel Lowe out of the top of the lineup takes a low strikeout guy and a decent hitter out of the lineup. But, like I said, replaces him with a decent bat. So some interest in Detmers, more so on DK. Some interest for sure in Haney. But you need the strikeouts to come through, and you need him to avoid the home runs. You can see the home run totals that he's pushing toward the Angels, particularly the right-handed hitters. There are some significant right-handed hitters in that lineup for power, and there's a Shohei Ohtani landing in there on the left side. So massive power potential on the Angels side of things, and I don't want to hide that whatsoever. Haney's been better for home runs this year, but it was a problem the last 2 seasons. Small sample so far this year, 12 starts, 63 innings pitched, a 3.76% home run rate on 10.1% barrels. A good improvement in the hard hits, 35.5%. Last year, it was 11% barrels, 47.7% hard hits, 91.2 miles an hour average exit velo with a 4.52 home run rate. Year before, even worse for home runs at 5.2, but better for barrels, a little bit better for the exit velo and the hard hits. So just filthy for home runs. And we've all had Haney, I think, in our lineups where he's come out and given up 2 early home runs and just been ugly and not delivered the strikeout upside. So that's the guy we're wrestling with here. 9,000, I don't mind skipping him. I don't mind skipping him 140 times out of 150. He'll make it into a few lineups for me on FanDuel, but I don't know that I need him as much on the FanDuel slate. I think he's a more important piece on DK. Definitely rostering Angels bats. We'll see what configuration of the lineup we get, but at a minimum, I'm obviously interested in Trout and Ohtani, assuming Trout plays today. We would expect to see him in there. 14 home runs for Trout, 20 for Ohtani on the season. 2 superstars that I don't need to sell to you guys. Taylor Ward has been a roller coaster this year, only 8 home runs on 90 WRC plus and only a 137 ISO, but he did hit ball pretty well from the right side last year, did hit a bunch of home runs last year, and he was a roller coaster if you remember last year too. Started out outrageous, cooled off badly, and then came back in the last 2 months of the season to round out to pretty good numbers. So I think Ward's in play if he's up there. Anthony Rendon, I've talked about a number of times, is very cheap, 3,300, 3,000 across sites. Still can hit the ball, still can drive the ball. Hasn't been hitting home runs, but up to a 42.3% hard hit. Only 1 home run on the season, only a .064 ISO. But I do think there's quality there, and I think he gets on base at a very good clip. 374 on base at 11.6% strikeout rate, a good walk rate. So he's got a guy who can put the ball in play reliably in the heart of that order is a guy that I do want to use in lineups, with the idea that, his power absence is already baked in at those prices. So I don't really mind that he's not hitting as many home runs. Drury and Renfroe do hit a lot of home runs. Significant upside for power from both of those guys. 10 on the season for Drury, 12 on the year for Hunter Renfroe. I need a haircut. I've got these little side hairs going into my ear. I keep thinking they're like little bugs. Keep scratching in my ear. Luis Rengifo. Chad Wallach. Two interesting players late in the lineup, assuming that they're in there. Wallach is obviously drawing a decent home run number here. 9.34. He's got a 15.9% barrel rate, 43.2% hard hits in 75 plate appearances, 5 home runs this season, 250 ISO. Maybe it's a little believable. Looking back over time, we don't have a lot to support that number, but it's in there. So, maybe you're playing some Wallach if he's in the lineup. We'll see what configuration it comes out in. Renifo, handful of home runs last season. Not been great this season. Sitting 3.8% barrel rate, 32.3% hard hits, 212, 292, 309. Hasn't been great this year. I typically refer to him as I like him better than Gio Urshela. I'm not sure that's true right now, but I do like the price. I do like the multi-position, and I believe in the bat. I think he was 17 home runs in 500 and change plate appearances last year. I don't need to scroll over for that one. Zach Neto, cheap prices at shortstop, and a productive enough kid. 259, 338, 431 in his first 199 plate appearances with 6 homers and 5 stolen bases at the major league level. For that price in that lineup, I'll take that. So I think you can go to them. So top to bottom and basically on both sides with the bats. Both pitchers are in play for value. We've got a few of these games today where there's kind of 4 corners that could come through or get tragically destroyed. And I think that's one of them where you can play the bats on either side of that one. You can play the pitchers on either side of that one. And it could go any different direction within that. Cubbies. I am interested in some Cubbies. We'll see what the lineup looks like. I just dropped it in here. I think that's basically what we had projected. Still no wisdom in the bottom of the lineup with all his power, which is unfortunate because I think this was a good spot. I still like the projections. You can see a bunch of green dots there for the Cubbies. I like the projections I'm getting for the Cubs going up against Osvaldo Bido in his major league debut. Bido is a non-prospect, unranked prospect. I forget how old, 27, 28, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. Had a 5-something xFIP in AAA this year, a low strikeout rate in AAA. Doesn't seem like there's very much on the mound. He's not available, as far as I know, unless they added him on either site. So I don't worry about him on the mound. But what I think you can do is throw some Cubs bats at him with expectation of, at a bare minimum, he's been walking too many guys in AAA. So at a bare minimum, you've got the expectation of some on-base opportunities here for the Cubs, some run creation opportunities, some sequencing, and they do have power in this lineup in small doses. That's where I wanted wisdom, obviously. You do have Chris Morel sitting there with his 11 quick home runs, 18.6% barrels, 47.5% hard hits, but I'm more focused on guys like Seiya Suzuki, Ian Happ, Dansby Swanson in the heart of that lineup, all very cheap on the FanDuel slate, just like they were yesterday. You get Swanson at still 5,100, but that's cheap for what his talents are over time. Multiple seasons of 20-plus home runs, double-digit stolen bases for Swanson over time. I like him better in the middle of the lineup than I did hitting second. So we'll see what we get out of Swanson going forward. But for tonight, I think there's good opportunity there. Alongside Happ and Suzuki, who both get on base, who can both hit for power. Happ's got a 390 on base. I mean, that's going to play really well, I think, against his pitcher. Taubman has been getting on base at the top of the lineup, 403 on base percentage. Another guy kind of weirdly cast in the top of the lineup, but he's earned it right now in 78 plate appearances. Not sure how he's going to hold up. He's kind of a quad A type talent, but he's priced like at 2,800, 2,400. So I think you can use him off the top of the lineup. Horner is a productive guy. Matt Mervis, I believe in the power. Only 3 home runs in 96 plate appearances, sitting at 172, 42, 95 so far, 47 WRC plus. It hasn't been pretty for Mervis. He's striking out at a 33.3% clip. I do believe in the pedigree and what he did coming up through the system in terms of power, and he's sitting at a 14.3% barrel rate and a 50% hard hit in those 96 plate appearances in his batted ball events. So I think we can grab some Matt Mervis at 25, 24 at first base. Yan Gomes, super valuable catcher. 7 home runs on the season, 12% barrels. Good power hitter over time from the catcher spot. You know, in those catcher 12 home runs here, 15 home runs there, kind of, double digit mid-range type performances. But that's a very cheap price for a guy who is a productive catcher, has been a productive catcher this year. 3,400 where you need to play the position. I like that spot. Nick Madrigal, take him or leave him, 2,400, 2,200. Might turn the lineup over, might steal your base. Kind of low end. Drew Smiley against the Pirates. Moderate in play maybe for 7,200 as a low end SP2 on the DK slate, but the Pirates have been pretty decent against lefties. They were 12th in baseball by WRC plus. It wasn't crazy. I think it was like a 109, I want to say. It's in the article. They've been better against lefties this season, so I don't know that you want to go to Smiley. Only a 20.5% strikeout rate. you're not leaving that much on the table here, right? It would be a clean innings play if you were to go to it, and I don't know that you get them. So I'm not really worried about leaving Smiley on the table here. You can go to it if you wanted to, if you were already doing it. Don't let me talk you out of it necessarily at that price. There's a minor amount of upside there. There's not a ton of strikeouts in this projected version of the Pirates lineup, 21.2% overall on the season. Better, I think, against lefties as well for strikeout rate. Guys like Brian Hayes, Carlos Santana, Brian Reynolds. Reynolds is significantly worse against lefties. That is something to point out here, though. For his career, he's hit for a lot less power, hits for an okay average and still creates runs okay, but hits for a lot less power in his career against lefties than he does against righties. And he's been having a weird season too. 191 on the ISO, 121 WRC plus, 7 home runs, but 5 of them were in that first week of the season. Hasn't done a lot, but is still semi-productive, still a good 54.7% hard hit rate, a 14.1% barrel rate. Just hasn't really provided a ton of counting stats. So I will include Reynolds in some stacks, but maybe I use him, like if the field starts getting carried away, maybe I temper my expectations. A guy that I really want to go to in that Pittsburgh lineup, assuming that he's in there, did we just get it? No, we didn't. Is Rodolfo Castro. 6 home runs on the season. All of them have come against lefties. He's smoking lefties for I think it was a 3-something ISO over the course of the season, and has just been better for his career against left-handed pitching. So that's a guy I'm interested in. 3,400, 2,400, second base and shortstop eligible. Kind of hope he hits a little higher in the lineup than 6. If you were getting him 5th, it would be great. If you were getting him 3rd, it would be even better. Swap him and Connor Joe. Connor Joe also productive against lefties. 6 home runs on the season, a 117 WRC plus overall. 3,400, 2,800, another playable part, first and outfield eligible. Bottom end of the lineup, Mark Mathias, G1 Bay, Jason DeLay. DeLay you can grab some power from potentially. 1 home run on the season, 87 plate appearances. Decent stick at catcher. I think you can maybe use some Jason DeLay at 2,500 if you're using Pittsburgh. I wouldn't go out of my way for him as a one-off or anything. But yeah, definite interest in Castro. Definite interest in like the McCutchen, Connor Joe, Brian Hayes, Castro stack. Throw Brian Reynolds into that, of course, because he is their most productive bat despite struggling against lefties. But yeah, it hasn't been pretty for Brian Reynolds against lefties this year. Talked about the Cubbies. Talked about the pitching. Think we're good there. So no real need for either pitcher. If you want some Smiley value, you can. But I prefer the Pirates side of the equation in that head-to-head matchup. I won't get carried away with Pirates shares. I very well might get carried away with Cubbies shares. We'll see. Both lineups in for this one, the Reds and the Royals. Ben Lively, Daniel Lynch. You will see some mid-range projections for these guys, and I don't think it's wholly unbelievable. Definitely strikeouts available probably for both of them. Definitely for Ben Lively facing this version of the Royals lineup. Everybody basically, or every relevant hitter in the lineup has a pretty aggressive strikeout rate, or at least 20 plus. Guys like Nick Pratto sitting at 34.3, MJ Melendez 29.7, Massey at 29. There's a lot of strikeouts on tap here. Lively 24.8% strikeout rate, over 36 and a third in his first few starts here, giving up too much power at 5.37% home runs, but only 88.8 miles an hour average exit velo, I guess, is the only there. 39.2% hard hits and 9.8% barrel. Those aren't great in terms of the contact, but he's pitching effectively enough to get through this Royals lineup twice with a handful of strikeouts. For 6,800 on DK, he's in play as an SP2. 78 on FanDuel, I just think we run into that wall of probably won't book the quality start, probably won't find you enough to offset that difference between what the top-end pitchers do. Now, if all 3 of those top-end pitchers, or all 4, if you want to throw Garrett Cole into that mix, if all 4 of those guys go bust tonight, or don't deliver big performances tonight, or have one of them do that, then yeah, anything's in play. You never know, and the values will be strong. But I don't expect to get that given the matchups those guys are in. I think one of those guys is going to deliver, if not all of them. So Lively's in play, but better on DK. Same story for Daniel Lynch. I hesitate saying that. 23% strikeouts, 6.8% walks, a 4.42 xFIP, a 4.41 ERA. Has been better at limiting power than Ben Lively has. 3.9% barrels in his 16 and a third innings, 3 starts. It's just the Daniel Lynch of it all. I don't know. 20.3% strikeout rate last year while walking 8.7, giving up a 3.5% home run rate, 47.7% hard hits. Doesn't that sound a lot more like who Daniel Lynch probably really is? I don't know. It's not great. I don't love this spot. My model likes it better than I do. I think if he comes through with a few strikeouts there, which is, potentially supported by the idea of a 14.3% strikeout rate and a 27.9% CSW so far this year, both of those numbers are up decently from the 11.3 and 24.8 from last year, which supports the idea of a 3-point gain in his strikeout rate. But it's a very small sample. I think he's more the pitcher we saw last year than the okay guy from this year, who has also, not been great. So I don't know that I need Daniel Lynch, but again, that same token at 6,500, what do you really need from him on the DK slate? 7,300, probably not. Probably not. Maybe a couple of shares for 73 on FanDuel. But again, it's just one of those spots where he's got to deliver enough to make up that gap that we're going to have between him and the best starters on the slate. And there will also probably be a gap between a guy like him and a number of these other mid-range type guys. So even if the stars don't deliver, even if he has an okay game, there's probably still somebody at like 85 who's going to give you a better game than he gives you and you get the same hitters, and you left money on the table if you use Lynch. So I don't know. It's not great there. You can go to Reds bats. Newman, McLean, India, Ellie off the top, Spencer Steer off the top for sure. Nice multi-position eligibility for 3 of those guys across the DK slate. I like it as a value play on DK. They're a little bit pricey on the FanDuel slate. There's a lot of strikeout in Ellie right now, 38.9% strikeouts for all his excellent quality over 36 plate appearances. That was the knock on him in his ascendancy, is the kid strikes out a lot. So maybe that supports the idea of Lynch finding a few. There's also a very good chance that Ellie just turns on one and obliterates a ball and hits it to Nebraska in this game. So definite interest there. Newman's okay. He's an effective guy at the leadoff spot in general. 85 WRC plus. You want to see a little bit more returns there, a little bit more returns than like the hit tool, the on base. But at that price, you can bolt him on to these more productive hitters. But you want to start, I think, most often at McLean. 4,500, 3,700 is effectively cheap on DK. Little pricey on FanDuel for him. 322, 375, 492, 29% better than average creating runs in his early start to his career. India is a productive guy over time. 7 home runs, 12 stolen bases for cheap pricing on DK. Again, 3,600 is at best the right price for India on FanDuel, but 48 is probably a little bit of a discount on DK. Spencer Steer, 4,300, 3,400. Those are good prices for him on both sites. Productive guy this year, 8 home runs, 18% better than average creating runs. Putting bat on ball pretty effectively as well. The barrels haven't been there. The hard hits haven't been there really. Both of them are at or around what he did last year. The hard hits are up a little bit. But the 8 home runs, the 5 stolen bases are good, and he's hitting 278, 359, 465. So productive guy there. Tyler Stevenson has fallen off a little bit in terms of his productivity, but if you're going to a bunch of red stacks, you obviously include him where you need catchers. Stuart Fairchild's semi-interesting for 24, 26. Hopkins and Barrero, not so much at the bottom of the lineup there. The Royals, if you're going here, you're sticking basically with the top end of the lineup like we always do. Nick Prado, Sal Perez, MJ Melendez, Bobby Witt, Mike Massey. Good amount of hard hit there, good amount of barrel rates. All those guys, 10 plus barrel rates in the mid 40s or higher in terms of the hard hits. Hasn't translated to a ton of home runs for some of those guys. 14 is good for Sal, 11 is good for Bobby. But then you've got Prado in there at 4, only 169 plate appearances. The confusing one is MJ, sitting at 5 home runs, the 137 ISO that I talk about all the time, despite his ridiculous contact profile. One of those things will change over time. We'll see what happens. Massey, 4 home runs in 199 plate appearances. Hasn't been great, 62 WRC plus, but can turn on the ball, and the contact profile supports the idea of a better hitter than he's been. Olivares, Nicky Lopez, Freddie Fermin, Dayron Blanco. Not the greatest bottom 4. Olivares would be my preferred option there. Moderate power, moderate speed for cheap prices. I don't love Nicky Lopez. He at least limits strikeouts somewhat effectively, walks at a decent clip over 98 plate appearances. There's not a lot to like at the bottom for the Royals here. So, handful of pitching shares on either side if you want them for value. It's not great. Handful of hitting shares if you want them on either side. The prices are what they are. The Royals are probably the better value on the FanDuel slate. Probably tied for value on DK, given the 2 high prices on DK for Perez and Witt. Everybody else is cheap over there on the Royals. So, yeah, you can definitely draw value hitting from this game, I think, in different combinations. I think the Nats lineup is in. Let's grab that one. Nationals. Nationals are a super low-end option. I could have skipped the Nats entirely and just not even bothered with that. We talk about the Nats against lefties a lot. They've been much more productive this year against left-handed pitching, but they are facing Framber Valdez, who is not your average left-handed pitcher. Framber is a guy that we love in this space because of how he limits home runs, or we get frustrated by him if he's facing a good team because of how he limits home runs. But he's just excellent at taking the bat out of opposing hitters' hands. You can see he's pulling a monster projection for 10-3, 11-3. Nice value price for him. He should be more expensive than 10-3 against this team on the DK slate. I'm not sure where that 10-3 price came from, so very, very interested on both sites in rostering shares of Framber. He pitches deep into games, 84 innings in 13 starts. I have to think that leads the league. I didn't bother to check. 26.5% strikeouts, so the strikeouts are up this year. A 2.86 xFIP, a 2.36 ERA. Phenomenal at limiting home runs and launch angle, keeping the ball on the ground. All these things that we always talk about in glowing terms for Framber. All of this is in play today. It's going to limit the Nationals. If you want to go to Nats, you're going to Lane Thomas, Joey Meneses, Stone Garrett, Gilbert Ruiz, and maybe Alex Call. Eimer Candelario has been bad against lefties this year, has always hit for more power against righties. I believe all of his 8 home runs have come against righties this year, and Framber doesn't allow power anyway. I don't expect much from Candelario. I don't expect much from any of these guys, but if you want to focus on them, it's those righties up at the top of the lineup plus Gilbert Ruiz. That's about it. Ildemaro Vargas, Dominic Smith, Alex Call, CJ Abrams from the bottom of the lineup. One of them could connect. They could deliver. It's baseball. Anything can happen. But that is a low-end play if I've ever seen one going up against this pitcher. So very, very low interest. No interest in the Nats. I will probably have no shares of Nationals in my lineups. Astros on the other side, against the most frustrating pain-in-the-ass pitcher in baseball, I think we have to go to them. Josiah Gray, every time I attack him, seems like he delivers and limits home runs. Every time I say, all right, we can maybe get away from attacking him, seems like he gives up home runs. It's a real pain in the neck. 19% strikeouts, 11.9% walks, a 4.92 xFIP. I think you can target that at the very least. If he's not giving up power, at least he's putting guys on base. At least there's the idea of run creation with these Astros. So I don't really want Gray. At 66, you can definitely get away with it as an SP2 on DK. There's enough potential for strikeouts at 1 and 5. Not that the Astros are easy to strike out, particularly some of the premium bats in that lineup are very difficult to strike out. So that could cause great problems. But at 66, I think it's okay to do. It's not one of my favorite spots, and I expect that this will go in the Astros direction. I'm selling more on the Astros side than I am on the Josie Gray value side. 81, I want no part of him on FanDuel. If he delivers, I'll lose the slate. That's fine. I don't trust it. I don't trust the good starts. I don't trust him to do what I want him to do. So it's just a real pain. Larry C says no Cattell or Carroll in the Arizona lineup. That's a twist. We'll get to that one in a bit. But yeah, that's definitely a strange one. PoTGen Stoner says, Terry, just wondering if you were ever going to stream on Rumble. I'm more of a tip, go to monthly package dude. Plus they don't talk as much rake. Just wondering. I take as much rake. I actually don't know anything about Rumble. So possibly let me know what it is and we'll go from there. Yeah, that's one that has escaped my attention so far. So I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but let me know and I can look into it. Let's see. Oh, Larry, you said no low. You didn't say no love about the Rangers lineup. That makes so much more sense. I didn't catch that earlier. I just saw it. Trey says, why don't the Cubs play Morel that much? He wasn't in the lineup last night. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. They flop. I think Wisdom's a little banged up, so that makes sense that he's been in and out. But Morel should be an everyday player for them. I'm not really sure why they bounce him around. I think there's just a lot of mouths to feed there right now with some of like the veterans. Like a Mancini who demands time every now and again and guys like that I'm not necessarily thinking of. So I think it's just a mix and match thing, but he's obviously one of the better players in that lineup and belongs in that lineup every day. So Astros bats. Dubon, it sucks that you're getting Dubon as a leadoff hitter, but I get it with Jordan out of the lineup. They want to move Altuve down and cover that absence a little bit. Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker. So it's Altuve, Bregman, and Tucker, the 3 guys who are over the magic number for home runs in a row right here. Those 3 guys are stellar plays on either site. They're all cheap for their talent levels. Altuve missed time. Bregman and Tucker have kind of underperformed this season, but I believe in all 3 bats, and you're seeing good projections here. So go to those 3 guys when you're attacking Josie Gray. You can bolt Dubon on. You can bolt Jose Abreu on kind of uncomfortably, but at least for cheap prices. He's about to crack the 40% hard hit rate number for the season, hopefully. Push the ISO up to .072. Maybe some signs of a weak pulse and some breathing here, but it hasn't been pretty for Abreu. No Chas McCormick in the lineup sucks, so we did get our Chas McCormick home run that we were hunting for last night. Like to see that, but we don't get him today. Don't know why. Yainer Diaz, Jake Myers, Corey Julks, Martin Maldonado. Not the greatest bottom half of the lineup here for the Astros. So it's really 1 through 4, maybe some Julks as the most interesting hitter toward the bottom end, even though Myers has outpaced him in terms of run creation this year, outpaced him in home runs. So maybe some sneaky Myers for very, very cheap prices. 9.6% barrels, 6 homers, a 109 WRC plus for Myers. Nobody's really paying attention to that output, so he'll probably be very low owned. So it's not a great Astros lineup, but some interest. Probably knock him down a peg, though, for a lack of McCormick. So enthusiasm about Fromber. Some enthusiasm about the Astros toward the top end and some mix and match parts. Nothing from this side for me. Maybe some Josie Gray for the DK folk. Rays and the A's. No lineups. Tyler Glasnow. $9,400 Tyler Glasnow. $10,100 Tyler Glasnow. Projecting as one of my very top-end pitchers. He's one of the guys that I've been talking about on this slate as a guy who's in that higher price tier that I expect to totally deliver today. 31.3% strikeouts, 10.9% walks is ugly, but 31.3% strikeouts just kind of arrived back on form for who Tyler Glasnow is and what I expect from him. 3.13% home run rate on 21.6% barrels. That would be problematic if that didn't only represent 2 home runs in 3 starts. I'm not really worried about those numbers right now. If that continues over time, we'll worry about that in terms of the premium contact. But he's also facing the Oakland A's. I know they've won some games. I know they're on a bit of a roll. I don't care. They're still a bad lineup. They're still a bad team. Glasnow hasn't pitched much over the past few years. You can ignore this. 36.2% strikeouts in 88 innings before his injury and 14 starts 2 years ago. 17.2% swinging strikes, 33.7% CSW. These are elite numbers. These would be among the league leaders. These are Spencer Strider-like numbers. A little bit lighter than Strider, but approaching that level. And similar in the first couple starts here this year. So I believe in the good for Glasnow. Maybe it's unfair, but I believe in the good. I don't believe in the bad that we've seen in terms of the couple of premium contact instances that we've seen. He is going to pitch reliably deep enough into this game, I think. Obviously, unless he gets into trouble, and then you've lost anyway. But what I'm trying to say there is I think we've got a good shot at a win and a good shot at a quality start bonus from him here. So I'm firing away with Glasnow here against the Athletics. I hope that somebody somewhere is saying something bad about him that knocks his ownership down, because I'm enthusiastic about this spot. Esteury Ruiz, Ryan Noda, Ramon Laureano, Seth Brown. That's your decent hitters from the A's. If you're a Brent Rooker guy, Godspeed. You can bolt him in there from the 5 spot if he's in the lineup. 3,100, 13 home runs on the season. He had 12 home runs on, I think it was like May 11th or something like that. Not a good player. Has cratered back down to earth. Hit the 13th home run. I guess there's that. The numbers are still there. If you look across that line, it still looks productive. But we know that this hitter has not been, had a major outburst in March and April and has not been nearly at that level since then. So I'm looking at Ryan Noda, Seth Brown. Those are the 2 good hitters in this lineup, the lefties. They both have power. They both have a little bit of speed. Noda's got elite skills at getting on base despite his strikeouts. Aggressively good at walking. A 150 WRC plus for the season. Esteury Ruiz, with all his speed, you want him to get on base more, like I keep harping on, but you bolt him onto a Noda and Seth Brown stack. Maybe you work in Laureano or Brent Rooker if you're building on DK and you want 5 guys from this lousy team against an elite pitcher. I don't like the opportunity for the A's. Shea Langoliers is a cheap catcher play. I will always mention 8 home runs on the season, sturdy contact profile for 2,500 from the bottom of the lineup. Only a DK play, really, where you need a catcher. The Rays are an elite lineup. They are pulling in the highest overall projections when we average the projections because they're facing Luis Medina, who is pushing just ridiculous scores toward all these hitters. Any configuration of this Rays lineup, I think you can play it up and down against this entire A's pitching staff just all week long, or in any spot against a weak pitcher like this. Medina, 20.5% strikeouts, 10.9% walks, a 7.53 ERA. The xFIP's a lot better, 4.77. That's not a good xFIP, but it's a lot better than the 7.53 ERA. has been filthy for home run power. 43% hard hits, 10.3% barrels, a 6.41% home run rate. Why do I care about that in a 34 and 2/3 inning sample, and I don't care about what Glasnow has done in 15 and 2/3? Because I believe a hell of a lot more in Tyler Glasnow. I've seen Tyler Glasnow do this at this level before. Medina has never done this at the major league level before, and probably won't have much of an opportunity to if he keeps pitching like this. Fire away with Rays bats. Yandy Diaz is filthy good at the top of the lineup, should cost more than 3,800 with multi-position on FanDuel, but doesn't, so grab some shares of that. 5,200 is pretty low for Yandy on the DK slate. I know a lot of the production came earlier in the season, and he's taken a little bit of a dip, but still a very productive player, and it wasn't a total surprise at the beginning of this season. I have Yandy on 27 out of my 30 public league teams this year because I was expecting good performance. I was not expecting 12 home runs by early June. Don't get me wrong. Nobody was expecting this kind of output. But he's been a steady stick at the plate in terms of the average, in terms of the run creation. So with the power added, it's just been dynamite this year. So I'll keep going to Giandy until he proves me wrong. Wander Franco, Josh Lowe, Randy Arozarena. Tons and tons of pop in this lineup. Arozarena was my Rays pick for a home run today, and then Luke Raley from the 6th spot was my overall home run pick for the day. Hopefully we get him in the lineup today. I missed on Muncy yesterday because he didn't play. I should have taken the Chas McCormick call. Like I said, I was thinking about it. I almost did it, like I said on the show yesterday, and then I didn't, and then Muncy didn't play, which sucked. But just filthy for power up and down. All these double-digit home runs. Multi-position on a bunch of these guys, good prices on a bunch of these guys. The Rays are a good value. They're also the highest projected team on the board. They're also one of the highest projected home run teams on the board. There's nothing to dislike about this Rays situation today, unless they just forfeit the game. That's about it. Maybe they get intimidated by Oakland's reverse boycott, all the fans. I think that was last night, actually. Was that last night? Did anybody see that? I know they were planning it. I don't know if it was for today or for yesterday. Stephen Leibowitz says Sox could start with a delay from looking at the radar and forecast, but we'll pass through like you said. I'd rather that happen. Yeah, that's always my preference is start in a delay. That way we don't get the stop and the start for pitchers. Is Oakland going to break the 20-win streak? Yeah, Ricky, they're rolling, right? Somebody call Brad Pitt and get him to drive around to crappy songs by his daughter. But yeah, it's a strange little streak they're on, that's for sure. They drowned out the pitcher he couldn't hear. It was last night. It's such a strange way to tell the way they were phrasing it is we're going to show up to tell the ownership that the fans aren't the problem. But if fans not showing up is your problem and then the fans demonstrate that they can show up, then the fans are the problem. Am I wrong about that? Like, I know they're not giving them a lot to show up for, but if you do show up, if you take that initiative, start showing up, feed a little bit of money into the system, then the team spends more money on players. The team is more engaged in the scenario instead of trying to move. Maybe they're trying to win a little bit more. Am I crazy? Like, I know Oakland has good fans. They did show up for this team when they were good in spurts. They do show up for the playoffs, but it's just a weird way to go about making that point, I think. So that was my opinion on the reverse boycott. Anyway, we got to keep on rolling. There's a lot to talk about, and it's 5:23. What time did I say we were punching out? All right, let's go. Good pitching matchup here. What do we have? 4 games left? All right, we can fly through some of this. Good pitching matchup here. This has been the case with each of these Mariners games. It's kind of weird. The Marlins have a really good young pitching staff, and they've just combined with those Mariners strikeout potential to push decent projections for all these young pitchers. So I think Jerry Perez is right in that mix. 9,000. I wish he was a little bit cheaper than 9,092. He's not a true value on the DK slate. That's a little bit aggressive in terms of that 9,000 price. He could absolutely deliver on it, but it's more difficult to put that together with those premium pitchers where it's easier to put the other values, the 6s and the 7s and whatnot together with those guys, even some of the 8s. So it sucks that he's priced here, but I do think you can get a good game. I am somewhat interested at 92 on FanDuel on the idea of some strikeout upside. 24.8% strikeout rate on the year. The walks are ugly at 10.7. The home runs are okay, 3.31, but the contact profile's fine. 2.17 ERA, a 4.68 xFIP in 6 starts, 29 innings. I don't know that we get the depth of start. That's the problem for me. If I'm not chasing that quality start on a slate like this, even with a handful of strikeouts, I get a little bit concerned about Jerry Perez. But very, very talented, young, very young too. Just turned 20. So, dynamite young pitcher here. He could go out and have a slate bending game from late. A guy who's very likely to bend the slate late is Luis Castillo going up against this Marlins team. I do not know why Luis Castillo is 9,800 on this slate on DK. He should be the most highly owned DraftKings pitcher. If he's not, you guys are doing it wrong. Not you guys. You guys are obviously doing it right, but the DraftKings public at large is doing something wrong if he's not incredibly popular at 9,800. At 10-8, he should be incredibly popular on the FanDuel slate. Against this Marlins team, there's a ton to like about going to Luis Castillo. 76 and 2/3, 13 starts, pitches deep into games, 30% strikeouts, 5.5% walk rate, a .99 whip, a 15.8% swinging strike rate, 30.4% CSW that are among the league leaders over the course of the entire season. 15.8% swinging is second, third, or fourth on the among qualified pitchers in baseball. He was top 5 number anyway. He is right up there with the Spencer Striders of the world. Yeah, I'll keep mentioning Spencer Strider. I told you guys I traded him. I traded him ahead of this 3 home run disaster against the Tigers. My buddy Lou sent me a text message saying, "Oh my God, Strider gave up 3 home runs. What happened?" And I just replied back to him, "Hey, all sales are in as-is form. No returns or refunds for broken or damaged items." I don't know what's going on with Strider. It hasn't been as good over the last couple. We'll see. Not sure. But I think I might have gotten a deal there. He was on an expiring contract anyway. I didn't trade any future Spencer Strider. I'm actually hoping I get to, as long as he doesn't blow up his arm or something, hoping to draft him again in the first round next year. It's a short draft. Very shallow draft because of how our contracts work. I'll explain it to you guys some other time when we don't have a few games to fly through. So Castillo's very important piece for me on both sites. Love the price on DK, like the price on FanDuel. Dynamite opportunity. I will have lots of Luis Castillo in this matchup. If you're taking hedge stacks of the Marlins, it's really only the top 4 here for me. I think very little of that bottom end. Garrett Cooper is a playable part based on his contact. 8 home runs and 185 plate appearances. That's your 5th man in. Maybe Joey Wendell on the idea that he gets on base and steals you a bag. Gene Segura's been awful. Nick Fortes, if you're on DK, is a reasonable enough alternative as your 5th man in, but he's not great hitting down lineup separated from the top end there. It's not the greatest stack in the world, not the greatest hedge situation in the world. I talk about that a lot. When I do hedge, when I do attack highly owned pitchers, I want to do it with better teams than this, or I want to do it with against a lower end, lower strikeout pitcher than this, who just happens to be highly owned because he's a good value, good strikeout pitcher, not a great value elite strikeout pitcher type. So that's kind of the approach there. So limited interest in the Luis Arias, Jorge Soler, Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez part of the lineup here. That's where their power is. That's where their skill is. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know out there in the chat. I think you guys are sharp. I think you guys know all of that. Arias, 382 now. It's amazing how hard it is to hit 400. He was at 400, 3-4 days ago? Dropped to 382 after a couple cold games. So he'll bounce back and forth, I think, throughout the rest of the season. It'll be interesting to see where he settles in when it's all in the books. Mariners side of this one going up against Perez. I think you can grab some shares of this with the idea especially of some of the walks. They're not the greatest team in terms of drawing walks. Only 3 guys in the lineup with double-digit walk rates. Mike Ford in 24 plate appearances. We don't really need to count, but I threw it in there. A lot of aggressive strikeouts, but there's some home run potential. There's some good hit tool with Ty France in the lineup. JP Crawford knows how to get on base. Julio, with all his flaws this year, still has a 53.2% hard hit, 12 home runs, 12 stolen bases. It's the WRC plus, it's the triple slash that have come down. Teoscar, Jared Kelenic, Eugenio Suarez, and Cal Raleigh all strike out really, really aggressively, which could push strikeouts Yuri's way, but they all hit the ball really hard, and they all hit a lot of home runs. So that's what the kid's tangling with here. I do think there's upside for Perez, but I will be interested in combinations of, at least the top 7 here. You can even mix in a little bit of Mikey Ford if you need a really cheap bat. He's another quad A type player, another guy who was in that Yankee system a few years ago. 4 home runs and 24 plate appearances. There's something there. But yeah, quad A type guy with very low expectation, but mix and match piece for sure at 21, 22. It sucks that he's a first baseman. Like, you don't necessarily want to replace a lot of first basemen around baseball with that hitter. You don't necessarily want to replace Ty France with that hitter. But for a few shares here and there, if you've loaded up your salary with 3 of these guys and expensive pitching, and you need a $2,100 offset at first base, he's in play. Larry says, team values are nuts in MLB, NFL, and NBA, even NHL. Ottawa's selling and going to sell for about $1 billion. Yeah. Yeah, it was Cuban the other day. Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavs, was on and was talking about he bought the team for, I think it was like 600 and change million back in, what was that, the late 90s, early 2000s. and he could sell it for 3.5, 4 billion right now easily. That's just bonkers. Still not the Yankees, but pretty freaking crazy for a team that isn't all that popular. Like, there's not a ton of Dallas Mavericks fans in general around the world. They get a little bump from Luka, I guess, but yeah, it's wild what some of these values are. Let's keep on rolling. Mikey Waka. Mikey Waka's been pitching really well this season. 23.4% strikeouts, a 4.43 xFIP, a 3.18 ERA, 68 innings, 12 starts. If you're on like Yahoo and you sort to performance over the last 30 days, he's just been dynamite, pitching well. Kind of not unexpected. He's a good pitcher. He's around this level of performance throughout the course of his career, but I wasn't necessarily expecting him to put it together at this point. So it's good to see, but he's priced up at 9,900 on the FanDuel slate. That's just aggressive on a deep pitching slate with those stars that I keep talking about. 82, you can get away with it on DK. I think he fits into that value range on DK. I think he's a better value than Jody Perez, even though he probably has a lower ceiling for strikeouts going up against this strikeout limiting Guardians lineup, and with his 23.4% strikeout rate, I just think there's more ceiling there for extended innings, for clean innings. It wouldn't shock me if Waka went 6-7 clean innings here, struck out 5-6, got the win, got the quality start. I don't know that that's enough at that price on FanDuel, but I think it is enough to book him as a few shares on DK as a value. So we're going to a few shares of Waka. I don't really need that many Guardians or any. He's been good enough that, it limits any expectation for an outburst. I don't know that he's going to be popular enough that you're going to really want to attack him for any kind of leverage-based reasons, and they've just been bad. Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor are above average for run creation. Looks like Josh Bell's crept up above the average as well. Basically has his face sitting just above the waterline and is otherwise drowning. So it depends on which way the waves go. If a boat goes by, the wake might go over him and push him back below water. So we'll see what happens with Bell here. But he just hasn't hit for as much power as we thought he would. 6 home runs on the season, was a better power hitter 2 years ago. Andres Jimenez has been bad. The bottom of the lineup has been bad with Brennan Zunino and Straw. Jose Ramirez has given you a semi-effective performance. I was talking about him in terms of having a down year. Then he had that big outburst last week, so his numbers look a little better with 10 home runs, a 212 ISO, 122 WRC plus. But it hasn't been great in like long stretches for Ramirez, which is why you're getting him cheap, which is the nice thing. Maybe use some one-offs for him. 4,700, 3,800. That's a playable one-off for his talent level. But the stacks haven't been pretty. They haven't been stringing together runs like we thought they would. Haven't been getting on base. Steven Kwan at a 94 WRC plus. The on base is okay, but the hit tool's been gone all season. Not getting on base enough to support a good stolen base total. Rosario is completely cratered. So no real interest in the Guardians. Maybe a few shares mix into the pool, but it's not a great spot. Pods, definite interest. The top end pulling a little bit of power. Tatis is just going to have a monster home run number every day. I've kind of accepted that at this point. 13 homers and 212 plate appearances kind of supports that idea. 258 ISO, 45.2% in the hard hits, 10.8% barrels. Superstar by every definition of the word. Cost $6,400, $4,500. Priced like a superstar. Soto, more expensive on the DK slate at 61. I really like the value on Soto at 36 on FanDuel. They need to price him back up. 202 ISO, 10 home runs, 142 WRC plus, gets on base at a 408 clip, walks 20% of the time. He was striking out less a couple years ago at like 12% with a 20-ish% walk rate, but I'll take the additional strikeouts if he's going to hit for power. The hit tool kind of came back a little bit, 259, but the on base is fantastic. Soto's a terrific player. Machado and Bogarts are both cheap for their talent levels because they both scuffled a little bit this season. I'll roster the hell out of both of those guys, 4 and 5 in this lineup. Jake Cronenworth has underperformed this season, but he's a decent enough bolt-on play. I wish he was a little expensive or a little less expensive for the DK players. 2,800 is probably the right price for this form of Cronenworth. First and second base eligibility. 5,000 still a little bit pricey. He should probably be in like the low to mid 4s on DK right now. Gary Sanchez, best home run hitter in baseball? Who knows? 6 homers and 57 plate appearances, a 16.7% power rate, a 52.8% hard hit rate. He's roaring up to the top of the leaderboard. Definitely, I'll be facetious a little bit, but definitely interested in Gary if he's in the lineup. I still like the price at 4,300, 3,100. Obviously, I'm a fan. Obviously, I like the contact profile over the extended career. He's never been bad. He just has, he's misunderstood, as we'll say. Odor, Carpenter, Trent Grisham, kind of weak bottom end. Handful of homers from those guys. A 101 WRC plus. Odor keeping his airways above the waterline as well, over 108 plate appearances. But I think we know what we're getting from that bottom end. Some lefties down there. Oh, Savali I didn't touch on. effective enough league average-ish kind of a pitcher with lower than league average strikeouts this year so far. Only 4 starts, 23 and a third. Was better for strikeouts last year, 24 and a third, 24.1 in 97 innings. Effective enough guy, but never a guy who's going to come in and blow the doors off of a lineup. If he has a good start today, I think it's more in that range where he gives up 3-4, has an okay start for innings, eats 5-6 innings, and probably doesn't chase a win. So it's probably not going to be an overly relevant DFS score. At 84, even though he projects well in the model there, I don't really buy it. At 84, 77, so not that much interest in Savali. If you wanted to throw a couple darts, I might do it just on the idea of a little bit of faith in my model, but he's another guy. If he was in the 7s on FanDuel, maybe there's a little bit more there. At 84, between not buying it and having all that upside, do I really want to cost myself a Framber Valdez share, a Glasnow share? I don't know that I do. So more effective as a risk on DK. Don't really buy into it. Pods, we know they're top heavy. We know it's a weak lineup in the bottom half. We have seen pitchers succeed against this, but yeah, it's not great. Let's move on. Phil's in the D-backs. Let me grab this lineup so we can talk about that weird Diamondbacks lineup that apparently has Geraldo Perdomo leading off, followed by Emmanuel Rivera. That's an interesting combo. Let's give it a look-see. Somebody in the chat just asked, I'm not looking at that screen, but they asked DK cash pitchers. I think you named 2 stars. Let me jump back to it. Castillo and Glasnow, I have no issue with that whatsoever. If you can afford it, if you can figure out a good way to pay for that in cash, I think you're picking 2 dominant performances there and 2 guys who were a little bit underpriced for their talent on the DK slate. So yeah, I'm firmly with you on that big hitter. I'm also not a fan of playing cash games in general and not a fan of playing cash games at all for baseball. So maybe you're looking for a little bit more value in one of those spots on the DK board. We'll spoil the end of the show real quick. Maybe you go to like a Jose Barrios and pick off a value price. The masochist rather in me, or sadist if I'm recommending it to you, I guess, is looking maybe at Justin Verlander's upside at 8,000. That's kind of thin. If you wanted to go super value, maybe one of these guys, but that's super thin. If I was picking from among these guys, it would probably be Garrett Whitlock at 67 against Colorado. Assuming no rain, assuming a delayed start and a clean outing for Whitlock, that's probably my value guy. So if you wanted to go quality and value, you might go either one of those guys and Garrett Whitlock there. The matchup is pretty strong for him going up against that Rockies team. We'll get back to the pitching board later on. Some good names to talk about up toward the top there. But yeah, I think it's insanity to play cash games for baseball, quite honestly. I just it doesn't jibe well with my brain. So we're typically talking tournaments on here, but always happy to at least try to answer those cash game questions. And I think you were on the right track. Phil's in the D-backs. All right, let's look at this one. So the Diamondbacks are pulling a little bit of power through the middle of the lineup with these 3 guys, maybe some Pavin Smith there. But Geraldo Perdomo and Emmanuel Rivera are massive downgrades at the top of the lineup there. I think Rivera is an interesting enough player. He's been 2 different hitters the 2 years that he's played in the show. He hit 12 home runs in whatever it was, plate appearances last year, 300 and change. This year, only 1 home run in 119, but slashing 348, 378, 455, which is a dramatic turnaround from what he did last year. So I'm not sure where he's going to settle in over time. 3,400, 2,900, you can play him. You can play Geraldo Perdomo, who had that ridiculous run of productivity and then has cooled badly after that hot start and was awful last year. Came up as a top prospect last year and was just completely terrible. It's worth looking at those numbers real quick. Real quick. Perdomo, 500 plate appearances last year, 195, 285, 262. Everybody across the industry was like, ooh, that was a mistake. This kid's only like a utility player, maybe. He can play a bunch of positions. He fits around the diamond. They give him another shot this year, and he's at least earned a full-time role with what he did early, but he needs to keep it up. He's rocketing back toward, this kind of production when he started off very, very well. And then you can see in the second spot here for Emmanuel Rivera, he was 233, 292, 409, but had some pop last year. So like I said, just a different player across seasons. So the guys I have faith in here are Lourdes Gurriel, Christian Walker, Evan Longoria, and maybe some Pavin Smith, although Smith hasn't been good in terms of the hit tool. Some 7 home runs on the season is good. 168 ISO is okay, but the hit tool's been bad. So it's like a 3-man lineup here for the Diamondbacks. Tempers my expectations. And Ranger Suarez is not lousy in terms of his home runs. He's pulling an okay projection here on some clean innings, cheap prices. Kind of have him in play. You saw him; he was in the middle of that board for pitchers. I don't really trust it. I don't know that I would go to him. I prefer the Whitlock spot for price, like I said. 21.1% strikeout rate and 30 2/3 this year. He's good at limiting power over time, though. 1.50% home run rate on an 8.2-degree angle this year, 6.3% barrels. Last year, 2.27, 34.7% hard hits. Limited barrels, limited launch. Year before, limited barrels, limited launch. Some of these innings were out of the pen. He was a better strikeout pitcher 2 years ago. I think it's limiting enough with this bad version of the Diamondbacks lineup. It's probably not going to lead me to Ranger Suarez shares. Certainly not on FanDuel, where I don't think you're chasing the quality start here. But maybe on DK, there's a little bit more interest at 56. A little bit. Tiny amount of shares on the DK slate. But I think maybe you can get away with it. And I think it limits my interest in the Diamondbacks in this weird configuration. They could absolutely still deliver. There's enough talent in that 1 through 6 that they could deliver here. Even like a Jake McCarthy could get on base and steal 2 bases. It's just not great. It's not the best version of this. And it's a guy who has enough in the tank to limit the upside. What's next level DFS? Is that Guns? I forget what his, no, his is something else, isn't it? If it's Gundacker, subscribe over there. If it's not Gundacker, I don't care who they are. Trey says his group he's with, all right, years ago, doesn't know if they're around anymore. Okay. All right, so that's not Guns. Everybody pay Gun money and get behind his paywall. I'm not charging anything, so if you think about it, with his discount that he's building in for football and basketball for his rest of the year price, plus my free shit, come on. That's a deal. So go subscribe over at Gun. Support me. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, all that fun stuff. All right, let's dive back in here. Phillies going up against Merrill Kelly. That's a both-sided situation. I think I can avoid it at the 10-4 on FanDuel. He doesn't project all that well for me. He's pitching well this year. A 2.92 ERA, a 3.68 xFIP, walking a few too many, striking out 26.8%, but walking 9.8%. So that's not great. Has been very good in terms of BABIP, in terms of limiting hits, in terms of limiting opportunity against. You can see only a 2.61% home run rate, despite 8.3% barrels, 38.5% hard hits. Has been fairly effective at keeping the ball down. It might be another situation that kind of cuts the interest in the Phillies, cuts their output. You can see only Schwarber above the magic number for home runs here. So tepid interest in Phillies bats, but I'll probably get to some because I do tend to get to them. And I think these prices are still low, especially on FanDuel. Creeping back up a little bit on the DK slate. Harper high on DK, Turner a little bit higher on DK. But for FanDuel, for value, I think you can definitely go to Phillies here. It's not the greatest situation. Kelly is a good pitcher, but it leads me away from Kelly shares, maybe a little bit toward Philly shares on FanDuel. DK, there's more support for the Kelly play at 96. He's talented enough to get through this Phillies lineup a few times, find a few strikeouts. I think that price is a little bit more in line, but again, it's not a value price by any means. It's not an 8,000, which would be okay for his talents. It's certainly not one of those super cheap guys. So it's the take and leave situation about what are you getting to in combination with Merrill Kelly that's going to help you overcome those other scores. No, Gun's not run pure. He's something else. Run pure is a bunch of other guys, isn't it? It's something that sounds like that, though, because I almost said that, Chuck. So you're not like far off. And if it is Run Pure, then I guess it is. Yeah, it's not Run Pure. It's something else. It does sound like Run Pure, though. Somebody just go to Gun's site and check what it is. Run DFS. There it is. Run DFS. That's Gun. Our pal Gundacker over there. Go support him. We're going to get on another show. I don't know that we'll be able to do it this week. I actually have my niece's birthday party on Friday afternoon. So I'm going to figure out coverage. I'll probably get an article up early in the day. Might have to forego a show on Friday. We'll see what happens with my schedule. But Gun will have you guys covered for that. Gundacker Gaming, Run DFS. Yeah, that's it. That's it, Big Bino. All right, so Phillies. We got to get through this. We keep getting sidetracked here. So limited expectations for the Phillies, but I think they're cheap enough that I will get there on the FanDuel slate. Schwarber, Turner, Castellanos, Harper. We're not breaking any new ground there. JT Realmuto is obviously playable on both sites. Good catcher on DK where you need catchers. Hit for the cycle the other day, which was fun to watch. Stott, Bohm, Clemens, and Marsh is a great way to round out the final 4 spots in a lineup. It's a lineup that plays 1 through 9, really. I like the Phillies a lot. It's just that Kelly's talents kind of offset that. So there's a little bit of lower expectations for Philly, but some value-based pricing for sure, and some potential upside. And definitely don't sleep on these guys as mix and match plays. If you're building a bunch of Philly stacks, the lefty-righty, lefty-lefty there's good power from each of those guys. There's good run creation ability from each of those guys. Bohm is slightly below average with a 95 WRC plus, but was hitting better earlier in the season before he was in and out of the lineup a little bit. So and he hit the injured list for a little while. So I like Bohm. I like all those guys. 1 through 9 for the Phils, but again, tempered-ish expectations. Limited exposure to the D-backs in that weird lineup, but not really interested in Ranger Suarez outside of maybe a few value shares on DK. And some interesting Kelly, but he's very expensive for what he's probably going to do in comparison to the other pitchers. Last game of the night. Acuna hit a 461-foot home run. Acuna is very, very good. Yeah, 475 according to Yahoo there. Probably, your sources are probably more accurate. Acuna is just elite. He's so goddamn good. Timmy Anderson, Joan Moncada, Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn, Jake Berger, Jasmani Grandal, all set to take on Clayton Kershaw from the top of the White Sox lineup. Love Kershaw. 11-1, 10-8. You saw him at the top of the board when we sorted over to the pitching slate. Has been pitching at peak form all season. He may have had 1 or 2 clunky starts, but overall 2.95 ERA, a basically matching 2.97 xFIP, a 15.1% swinging strike rate, 32.1% CSW. He is elite. Those are league-leading strikeout number or strike throwing numbers. A 30.3% strikeout rate. 76 and a third innings in 13 starts. He's pitching deep into ball games. He's limiting power. He's got hard hits at 35.2%. It's Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw. We don't need to overthink this one. He's going up against the limited White Sox lineup that has been bad this year. People want to write off Clayton Kershaw. People have been trying to write off Clayton Kershaw for years. He's still elite. I'm going there. I invite you guys to come with me. 10-8, 11-1. It's the right price. Travis, rotoscouts.com. Rotoscouts.com. There should be a link in the description. Also a link to the Twitter handle, which is the same thing. There's a link to our Discord. Everything is free. So I've got an article that is long and detailed about all of this stuff, kind of talk through all these different points I make on the shows. I also post my individual home run picks for each team, plus my overall home run pick for the slate, for better or worse. And I post the power index, which gives you the averages for the top 6 and the full lineup. And as of yesterday, I'm posting the top stacks board, which gives you the breakdown of the average fantasy point projection for the entire lineup for each team, a value metric for each team, for both DK and FanDuel, the ranking for their home run rating, and the ranking for the opposing starting pitcher by my projections. So it gives you a nice little snapshot of the day's opportunities as they stand. So that's rotoscouts.com. Alrighty. So yeah, we are going to Clayton Kershaw, or at least I am. No links in my description. I forgot to put them in today then. Thanks, Trey. Forgot about that. Not going to go back and drop them in today. It's all manual process thing. What I should do is just create a little slug that I drop in there every day so that it's the same. That's probably the sane way to do that instead of retyping that description every day. And then the links will just be there. Anyway, Roto, R-O-T-O, Scouts, S-C-O-U-T-S. It also says it up in the top corner of the show here. But I think it's pretty easy to find. So yeah, where were we? Don't roster Mike Clevenger. 6,000, 6,800. If you want to do it, if you're part of the Clevenger family, Clevenger clan, probably a Clevenger clan. Maybe, but for me, not so much. Hasn't been pitching well this season. 4.19 ERA, a 5.39 xFIP, only striking out 18.9%, walking 9.4%, giving up too many home runs, too many barrels. Yeah, I don't think we're going there. I don't think we need to attack the Dodgers of all teams with Mike Clevenger here. So we're going to Dodgers bats. A lot of enthusiasm for the Dodgers on both ends of this game. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, JD Martinez, Max Muncy. If Muncy makes it into the lineup, I know he's dealing with some ouchies, so we'll see what version of the lineup we get here. But top to bottom, they've been basically elite. Miguel Rojas brings up the bottom in kind of weak form with a 33 WRC plus over 142 plate appearances. You can forgive him that spot. The other 8 guys are going to be pretty elite options. basically regardless of what they do. Bringing out, with the lineup here. JD has obviously had a great season, 5,400, 4,000 in the outfield, monster barrel rate, monster hard hits, 16 home runs, a 345 ISO to lead this ridiculously hard hitting team. The fact that he's leading the team in ISO by basically 100 points of ISO is just bonkers with a team that has Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Mookie Betts, and Max Muncy on it. He's just been absolutely outrageous in his opportunities this year. Betts, Freeman, and Smith are elite for not striking out, hitting for average, hitting for power. There's no reason to avoid going to Dodgers here, even if they're popular. Just roster them. They're a little bit expensive, but they're good value options late in the lineup to help you offset that. Chris Taylor, if he's in the lineup, 3,000 on DK, 2,700 on FanDuel with 3-position eligibility. You still have 3 positions on Mookie on FanDuel, 2 on DK. Lots of ways to string this team together, change up the combinations, put good hitters with good hitters, offset price, offset popularity. Love the Dodgers in this spot going against Clevenger. If you wanted to take a few shares of White Sox, it's another situation where I just don't see the need to attack Clayton Kershaw here. He's good enough that I just don't want to do it, and I expect such a good game. But it is at least a team, underperformances or no, at least we're not attacking Tyler Glasnow with the Athletics. At least we're not attacking Framber Valdez with the Nationals. You've got the idea of talent on this White Sox team. Timmy Anderson, Joe Moncada, Luis Robert Jr., Andrew Vaughn, and or Jake Berger is at least a serviceable top 5 with the idea of upside for more. Luis Robert has been great this year. Andrew Vaughn has been good for correlated scoring. 8 home runs, a 186 ISO is serviceable. Berger, that big home run outburst with 13 homers on the season, kind of Rooker-esque in terms of what he actually is. But I think he's effective enough to have in your lineup here if you're going to White Sox stacks. So I wouldn't do it often, but if I wanted to attack one of the likely to be popular, expensive, premium pitchers, I would probably choose to do it with the White Sox lineup, despite how much I like Clayton Kershaw in this spot, just on the idea that they're a more talented group of guys than those other groups of guys. Do I need to over-explain that? These guys are more talented than those other guys. Use these guys if you're going to do that. Don't need to spend 5 minutes explaining that. Clint Frazier at the bottom of the lineup, 2,200. I still don't understand why he's not appearing in the Fangraphs stats. I update that every single day. He's just not there. I think Fangraphs doesn't know that he's playing. I'm not sure. But he's possibly in the lineup. Elvis Andrus sucks. Romy Gonzalez is meh. So yeah, top end of the White Sox if you're going to do it, but very, very limited. Was that the last game? I think it was the last game. That was. We got these. We got that one. Yep. That's it. We did it. Look at that. Before 6 o'clock. All right. 21 minutes beyond what I was originally targeting for the end of the show, but that's fine. At least it's before 6. We got some time to build some lineups. Let's take a quick look at pitching. The stacks board, if you guys want to see it, is up on the site at rotoscouts. The way it works is the teams are currently in that shot are ranked by the projection number, which a lot of those are really close. So keep in mind, some of them, like you'll see the Red Sox were down a little bit. They were in like 8th overall for projection because of some lowish projections at the bottom of their lineup. As those teams compare to like a Rays team that runs with strong projections from end to end, they will dip a little bit on that average. Doesn't mean they're in a bad spot. That's why I try and include like the pitching matchup, the home run number to maybe bolster some of the expectation there. There's also the value numbers, which is just that value column. This little tilde column here, that's a value number. It's basically a points per dollar calculated against the projection and the salary. So those are averaged on the site as well. And then these guys are ranked. The opposing starting pitchers are all ranked. So it gives you a good idea of what the slate looks like in a quick form if you're trying to make some decisions. Glasnow, Valdez, Kershaw, Luis Castillo off the top. Any one of those guys is a great option today. These 3 project slightly better than Castillo, but I like him just as much as those other guys. So this is 4 deep. If you told me you were just, especially on FanDuel, if you said, hey, 4-man pitching slate for me, I'm just going with those guys, you're probably not making a mistake. One of those guys is probably going to deliver a slate leading start. Look at these opponents. Oakland, Washington, the White Sox, and the Marlins. Against those 4 pitchers, your top start is probably coming from that group. It's more interesting on DK where you've got a roster, probably somebody from this list. Maybe a Michael Wacha at 82. It's more interesting today on DK. On FanDuel, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say it's only these 4 guys, of course, because I do want maybe a few shares of Jose Barrios. Probably some more shares than that of Garrett Cole, despite the price difference. Probably a few more shares than Berrios of Verlander. No, maybe I'll stop myself there. Probably, I would say Cole goes here in shares. Berrios goes here. Then Verlander. No, maybe then Yuri Perez. Then Verlander. And then some mix and match smattering of maybe some Savali. Maybe some Daniel Lynch for super value. These guys are more in play as values on the DK board. 65, 56, 67. We talked about Suarez. I don't really buy this one. Whitlock, I believe in a little bit more. He's my favorite out of these three pitchers. Lynch, I don't really buy either, but there's enough upside there that maybe he can deliver. 65, I like a lot better. Wouldn't play him on FanDuel. Kelly, tough matchup. Doesn't project great for the price, but there's talent there. If you told me Merrill Kelly came out and delivered the slate winning score, I wouldn't fall out of my chair. Oakland versus Glasnow kind of suspect. On which side, sir? You think Oakland renders Glasnow suspect? I'm going to disagree on that one. If that's the point, I'm going to respectfully disagree. Oakland is not a talented team, despite their recent run of wins. But hey, that's why we do this. And it could work out that you're right. It could work out that I'm right. Odds are it's somewhere in the middle. And any given slate, these could go in any direction. Suarez versus Arizona is a bad play. Yeah, I don't disagree, Chuck. Lynch looks decent too. Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. It's questionable. Just saying Oakland has been playing well against Tampa. That's not a thing. Don't care. That's play well. What do they hate? Hate the colors of the uniforms? They don't like fish? Bottom feeding filter feeders with broad wings that float through the ocean and kill nature lovers in the 90s who have shows on the Discovery Channel? I don't think so. Yeah, they've been rolling. There's no doubt about it, Surf. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to be obnoxious. They've been on a little bit of a win streak, a little bit of a roll, but it's just a matter of talent versus talent. Glasnow, I know, is a tremendous pitcher with a major upside for strikeouts and a lot of talent in his arm. Even if we only get him for 5 innings, I think there's plenty of upside there. And you're going up against a lineup that has literally 3 hitters in it who have been above average for run creation this year. And one of those guys, that's in only 42 plate appearances. So really 2 guys who are above average for run creation this year. One of them is Brent Rooker, who hasn't been good since April. So really 1 guy, Ryan Noda, who's above average for run creation. I actually love Noda. I think he's a very good player. 409 on base, walks at a 19.1% clip. There's just not a lot of support. I think Seth Brown's the second best player on this team. So maybe you get a little something out of those guys. And it could absolutely go pop. But yeah, it's just not a strong spot in terms of the opposition there. And I think Glasnow's talent just shines through. 31.3% strikeouts. We looked the realistic number from 2 years ago, 36.2% strikeouts in 88 innings, 14 starts. He's just a very, very talented guy. We've just, kind of, written him off because he hasn't been pitching the last 2 years. So big time opportunity for him. Respectful disagreement with our pal Serv, but I appreciate Serv hanging out and weighing in and throwing his opinion in the chat. That's what drives these conversations. It makes it a better show when people are chiming in. So even if I disagree with you, I'm never going to tell you that you're dumb or that you're wrong. I just disagree. What cup am I drinking from today? I am drinking from Steal This Mug. It is a Creative America content theft mug that I actually did steal. It was sitting out one day. It said, steal this mug on the side of it. You don't need to tell me to do something like that twice. So I stole it, washed it out. Now I use it. But now that I create content, I actually kind of support their thought here. The idea is steal this mug, not our content or our jobs. So yeah, as a content creator, as somebody who writes and does videos on the internet, back off, AI. You can have my coffee, but you can't have my coffee. You can have my mug, AI, but you can't have my writing job. Anyway. Wes Maxwell says, thanks for all I do. You're good at what I do because I teach and as I go along. Well, thanks, buddy. I try to, not hoard knowledge and share it with people. Not that I try and receive knowledge too. If somebody comes in here and has a better idea, if somebody comes in here and has a piece of information that I didn't know, I am so willing to change my thoughts on a dime. So I appreciate the compliment, Wes. And everybody who's hanging out, I appreciate all the likes, all the support. I got to get out of here and stop talking and build lineups. Trey, don't get me started on AI. We don't have time for that. It's not scary yet, just based on what it actually is with like the ability to generate text and images and all of that. But the idea that like this is the 14.4 baud modem dial-up version that they were using in like war games in the movie War Games with Matthew Broderick in the 80s, where it's, and eventually we're going to get to the broadband version of AI. That's going to be the scary part. That's going to be where the Terminators come in. That's going to be where we're all living in a post-apocalyptic wasteland and fighting each other for scraps. Won't be worried about DFS at that point. Travis Duarte says, Glasnow was born in Santa Clarita, California. Comes out and throws a gem. There you go. Trey says he read an article in Japan. They disabled 3 robots and one rebuilt the other 2 because they didn't disable it enough. That's sick. Did you see the one? And this is the last thing I'm going to say. Did you see the one where it was a military test? The U.S. military was testing one of their AI-piloted drones in a simulation, thankfully. And the AI-piloted drone's instructions were destroy the target. You gain points by destroying the target effectively. And the AI drone was then, they were testing it through a wave off, like, oh, we don't actually want to kill that guy. Abort the mission, stop the mission. The AI drone eventually decided, I'm going to kill the guy that's telling me to stop the mission so that I can kill the guy that gives me points at the end of the mission, and did that. So then they disabled that. Then he went and disabled the communications tower that was, giving him the simulated feed to tell him to not kill the guy, and going and killing the guy. So it was just finding its way around us. So the point is, as we develop this shit, we're going to have to be really careful about how we phrase these things and what we do. So anyway, we'll talk more about AI. Like Larry says, we'll talk more about AI tomorrow. We'll talk more about all this fun stuff tomorrow. I'm going to go build some lineups tonight. My placeholders are in, thankfully, because I'm sure these contests are filling up. It's 6 o'clock. Good luck out there, gang. I appreciate everybody. This was a blast. See ya.